Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our live Friday broadcast, where we answer your questions regarding pronunciation, intonation, anything you need to help improve your communication in American English, both personally and professionally. Welcome back to those of you who have been to class before, and welcome to those of you who are new. I always take your questions at any point during the class, so feel free to type those in chat and I will get to them, give you answers and help for resources, how to pronounce words, those kinds of questions that you've been waiting to get an answer to. You can ask them at any moment. Today's topic, I'd like to continue talking about how to improve your fluency when you're speaking in English. And by improving fluency, I mean the flow, how smoothly you speak, how well you can be understood, how your words connect, and how Americans actually speak versus how words appear to be pronounced in written language. So I like to call this technique real talk. We look at the written words, and then we look at, in spoken English, how those words sound different, where we make connections, and where sounds and words are different than the written language. So some of the main elements of fluency we've been talking about the last few weeks are that we link words together, we reduce sounds. We don't always use a clear vowel on words when the words are unstressed and when they're in a connected speech. And we also use contractions for many of our verb forms. So we discussed linking and reduced sounds in the past two classes, and you can see those replays on the channel page, Speech Modification Seattle. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see past replays. I'll show you quickly because there are many resources, both here on my channel and on speechmodification.com, and sometimes it can be hard to find what you're looking for. I will let you know that if you want to send me a message, make a comment on any video, I'll always direct you to where you can find the answer to your question. But if you look at the channel page and you're looking for past live broadcasts, you just scroll down here. You can see the upcoming live streams and the training series, the playlists, and then you can look in recent uploads, and you can also look in past live streams here at the bottom. So the last few weeks we've been talking about this topic, and there have been a lot of great questions, so those are great resources to go through. You can also see that I have many videos that are not live videos where I've talked about these various topics. So this real talk topic is here in my playlists if you go to the real talk playlist. So if you look at my playlists and you page through, you'll find one called Real Talk. I also talk about this in the linking and reduced sounds playlist. There's been some recent uploads. I just recently uploaded a video about the reduced sound 2, and we talked about that quite a bit last week. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about a few more reduced sounds to help you with that. I'm also, of course, going to take your questions, and then I'd also like to move into talking about contractions, what they are, and why you should use them. So unstressed words in a sentence tend to go more quickly and they can be reduced. And we talked about this already when we talked about the word to, how the word to actually most of the time is pronounced as ta in connected speech in running English. Those are the symbols for the sound, the t and the sound, the vowel schwa. And so when I am talking to you in this class, I don't say I'm talking to you. I don't use a clear oo vowel. Rather, I say I'm talking to you. I'm going to talk to you. So we talked about that reduction in the past. And the reason that's reduced is that that word to is unimportant and it's unstressed in the sentence. We don't do this with all unstressed words, but many of these common words that are light and connecting words end up having a reduction. Another example is the word are. This is a very common word, and it's a verb, so it's important. So if I'm saying something like we are, then I'm going to use a clear vowel on are, we are. But if I'm saying something, for example, like what are you doing? The word are becomes less important and it's unstressed. In this sentence, doing gets the stress. And so what are you doing tends to go faster and be reduced. So rather than saying, what are you doing? You can hear how if I say all of the vowels and I break between the words, it doesn't sound smooth, it doesn't sound fluent. Americans will tend to say, what are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, so what's happening there when I say, what are you doing? You can hear how this is sounds natural, sounds fluent, doesn't sound informal or too casual. For informal professional speech, I can say, what are you doing? But what's happening there is that, first of all, I'm linking the what and the are. That makes my T turn into more of a flap T. So we talked about this quite a bit last week as well. Flap T is like a light D. So my what are, this ends up sounding like water. And you can hear, I'm no longer using that ah vowel in R. I'm not saying what are, I'm saying water. So the word are gets reduced and it just sounds more like What are you doing? Similarly, another word that tends to get reduced is the word you. Rather than having that clear vowel oo, it's going to turn into more of an what are you? What are you doing? All three of these are fast. What are you doing? What are you doing? And the do, that's where my clear vowel is and where my length is. So rather than what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? So the examples here are that I'm linking and I'm reducing the word are and the word you. We'll talk about some other words that tend to get reduced and have the reduced vowels in just a minute. I will want to look and see your questions and make sure I'm answering them as we go. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here in the live class. We have a question about the pronunciation of the word message. He's saying, I'm having a problem with the first syllable. I hear it as the first syllable of apple, but in the dictionary it's E. So when I say the word message, you're saying you hear it more like massage with an A. Massage. And that's probably because the vowel, like in red and message, and the A vowel, like in black and mass, are difficult to hear the difference between those two if you don't have those sounds in your native language. These are both lax front vowels, and for many people, they don't have either of these vowels in their native language, and it's difficult to hear and orient. This also comes up for many people in words like men versus man. So what you need to know about these two vowels is that when I'm saying the vowel as in men and red and message, that my mouth is not very open. It's a central vowel. It's similar to the A vowel that we have in words like rain. Most native languages will have an A. They don't necessarily have the diphthong A, but they have an A, and that's a tense vowel. And what you need instead is the lax vowel, and my tongue is just more relaxed for that. So to be able to hear and make the difference between something like massage and message, it's in how far my mouth is open. For the central vowel, not very open. For the a vowel, my jaw needs to be a little bit more dropped. So the a, as in black, and mass is more open. So if I tried mess versus mass, you can see there's more opening for the a vowel. What you might also want to try is that to hear that better is to find an anchor word for the eh. So if you can hear the eh in red versus rad, or in head or said, any other word you can find where you do hear the eh vowel, then pair that with message and try to hear that the vowel is the same. So if I said a read message, or I read my messages, read message, I can hear the eh is the same. I can also try contrasting words like I'm showing you here. I can try saying mass and mess and feel the distance and hear that distinction. Mass, mess. So I have a mass of messages, making sure those two are pulled apart in terms of the vowel sound and the distance in the opening of your mouth. That's a great question, a great comment, and many people have challenges with those sounds. I do have a video, several videos showing you the versus contrast to help you with that. So you can look at man versus men. You can do a search on my channel page or on speech modification. Or after the video, if you leave a comment here, I'll direct you to where those resources are. Another question. Question about the word regularly. I know it's pronounced with 4 syllables, but I'm wondering if it's acceptable to pronounce it more like regularly with 3 syllables. Yeah, I do think I sometimes might hear Americans say something more like regularly, but it is an error, and I would say you're better off using regularly. That's kind of a way of writing regularly. Just because when we say regular, we want to make sure we can hear the difference between regular, 3 syllables, and regularly, 4 syllables. So this is one where I would say, even though you might sometimes hear Americans saying something more like regularly, that's incorrect. That's just because they find it challenging as well. Lots of R's and L's in there. It is a tough word, but you do need to try to put all 4 syllables in. Just working on each syllable by itself, regularly, can help, and also practice and work on R's and L's and words that have both R and L. Good question. Thank you. Susan wants to know, should I worry about doing a glottal stop in English pronunciation? Is it common? No, the glottal stop is fairly uncommon in English. And the only time we might use it is if we have 2 words in a row where something ends with a vowel and starts with, the next word starts with the same vowel. Like, let me see. I would never say this, but how about, I'm thinking of umbrella because it ends with an umbrella action. So I don't elide those. I'm not going to say umbrella action with 1 sound. And I might have a tiny glottal stop there, umbrella action, to make sure that you can clearly hear that a new word is starting. Other than that, I can't think of good examples for when we use glottal stop in English. Maybe it's some other contexts where there's vowels together, but typically we don't use that sound in connected speech. So you don't need to worry about being able to make a glottal stop. Great question. We have another question. I'm trying really hard to get my accent. I'm from a different country and I'm in high school here in the US, and I've improved a lot. Give me suggestions to what I should do to be perfect. Well, you have an advantage if you're still in high school, that your brain is young and your ears are young, and you're going to be able to hear the differences in your speech versus the American speakers around you. So imitate your friends, imitate the other kids you hear around you. Watch videos and imitate the speakers in those videos. And also look for what sounds are different in your accent. And depending on your native language, you can find some help for specific sounds. So if you find it challenging, for example, to make TH sounds the way American kids do, or R sounds the way American kids do, you can watch some of my videos to help you with those specific sounds. And also know that American kids, when they're little and they're first learning English, they sometimes struggle with the TH and the R sounds. Those sounds come in a little bit later. So don't worry if some of the sounds take a little bit longer to master. They will come in if you keep practicing, you keep imitating, and you keep listening around you. Also think about doing as much as you can with listening and repeating, and thinking about the vowel sounds versus the vowel letters. And also, if you had English instruction in your home country, was that with a British accent or an American accent? So pay attention to the differences between British English and American English, which we talk about quite a bit here in this class as well. So welcome, I'm glad you're here, and I hope this class is helpful for you as well. We have another question, which is, explain the pronunciation of the word Because. Okay, this is a very good question. The word because looks like it's the words be and the word cause. And so many times people will mispronounce this word as though it were because. But you can hear that when I say because, it doesn't sound like be and cause. That's because of a reduced sound for the first vowel. So rather than an E like be, we actually do an I like big. So if I think about big and because, this is a reduced vowel. It's shortened and it's the I vowel rather than the E vowel. And then in cause, I have the ah vowel, but in because, I have a schwa, the vowel. So if I think about how that sounds, it sounds like because. So a couple of different errors. Another thing that we might hear is that people see the letter S and they might say an S because, and that's SE is actually a voiced Z sound. So watch out for the first vowel, the second vowel, and the Z, and that we have second syllable stress. So the first syllable is short and light, second syllable is longer, because. If you practice because and you can make all of the sounds, then you can start to make short sentences with because that'll help you correct the pronunciation. You will sometimes hear Americans say because, only if they're kind of pausing and they're thinking, or if they're just saying that word by itself. But in connected speech, they're always going to use the because pronunciation. Great question. Another question. Do you know if all vowels in Spanish are tense? Yes, the Spanish vowels are the ordinal vowels, the tense vowels. And so in Spanish, the vowels are the E, the A, the A, the O, and the U. And we have versions of these in English as well, but these vowels are common in many languages, not just Spanish, and they are the tense version. So by tense and lax, we mean in English we have a tense and a lax. We have an E and an I, and we have an A and an E. And in Spanish, they just have the tense version. Yes. We have another question. Can you break down how to pronounce the word cult? Cult. So we have the k sound. The vowel is vowel schwa, the sound. Cult, old. And then we just basically have a dark L and a T. The dark L means that I'm going to have a schwa sound before it, an o. But because the vowel in cult is also a schwa, I don't really have to do anything different. I just have to make sure when I'm making that L that I don't lift my whole tongue. I don't want it to sound like cult, with the front of my the whole of my tongue lifting. Just the front of my tongue lifts at the end. So I have an oh. One way to practice that is to try words like cull and gull, or hull. None of those are very common words. And then just add your T, cult. So I'm closing off for the L and then putting a light T on at the end. Thank you for the great questions, everyone. It's really helpful for me to hear what words you have questions about and what elements you're struggling with. That helps me choose what to talk about in class and what new videos to make. There is a new video this week about intonation where we're talking about pitch. So I'm going to talk about that in just a moment after we continue with your questions and the topic of contractions that I'd like to get to. Pitch is something that we talk about with intonation, and I like to talk about both pronunciation and intonation and how to weave those two together, because that's an important part of having correct pronunciation, sounding fluent, and being well understood in American English. Susan wants to know, is there any "ya" in the word while? So in the word while, I have the I in the word while. I have the I sound, which is an I. It's a diphthong, glides between two vowels. And then I have the O, again, the dark L, which has a little schwa before it. And so what you're noticing, perhaps, Susan, is that when I go from an I, to an from a smiling spread to an vowel, between those two vowels, there is a little bit of a y sound, while. So that's because of what's called vowel to vowel linking. And I have a lot of lessons, or I have one lesson about vowel to vowel linking and some videos about that. And so I'm moving from the I to the and my mouth shape just naturally kind of makes what sounds like a Y. That's the symbol for it, in between. While. And that is very helpful with a lot of these words, like also feel. Really sounds more like feel. That's because to go between those two vowels, I end up gliding and having the glide y in between. The other type of vowel to vowel linking will sound more like a W, and that's when I go from a round vowel into a non-round vowel. So for example, we even spell this with the word W. The word bowl has to go from an O to an O, and there's a little hidden W in there. Bowl. It's just a natural gliding sound from the fact that my lips are changing shape and my mouth is changing shape to do the two different vowel sounds. So that's a great question. And yes, in while, we do have the y sound in the middle there. Okay, great pronunciation questions today. Let's talk a little bit more about some reduced sounds and some contractions for our real talk fluent speech. Another word besides to and are that we tend to reduce is the word can. And this is helpful to know because many people struggle with hearing and pronouncing the difference between can and can't. There's some tricky things that are going on here. You can check out my video for can and can't for more details. But for right now, I just want to talk about how in the word can, we tend to say, rather than I can help you, unless I'm stressing the word I can help you, then I use a clear vowel. Otherwise, help is the most important word and the stress word in this sentence, and it sounds like I can help you. And you notice I didn't say I can help you. My an changed more to an n. So it sounds more like I can help you, or even just I can. The vowel gets very reduced, either down to an sound or no vowel at all. So I think about it as I can help you. So these two kind of link, the vowel gets reduced. I can tell you more, I can talk, I can go. It's formal and correct to use this reduced version of can. And if you use the full I can help you, people might hear it as though you're saying I can't. Because in American English, can't tends to maintain that vowel, while can, when I say it in connected speech, tends to have more of the or no vowel. And also with can't, we often use a stopped T there, so you can't hear the T sound. Notice how I didn't say can't. I said you can't hear. I stopped that T. So it's very confusing because this one sounds like can't, except that the N is cut very short by that stopped T. Again, I'm going into a little bit more detail than I meant to about can and can't, but you can watch my video about that and see my lesson about that. For now, when you're using can in a sentence, I can help you, I can go, I can do it. You want to use that reduced version of can that sounds more like can. We have another question. Words like mountain and fountain are really hard to say. Yes, so mountain and fountain, I'm saying that actually in a non-American way right now. Those are difficult, and that's because we tend to use mountain, we tend to use the stop T and the syllabic N. And so there's almost no vowel there. It sounds like mount, and my T gets stopped. So when I do the NT, I make the N sound, my tongue stays there for the T sound, but I don't release it. I don't say mountain, I say mountain. And I go right from a T, or from a stop T to another N. So this is a difficult combination. It's perfectly correct and appropriate to say mountain with the T, but what you're hearing when Americans say it is that they don't aspirate that T, they make a stop T, and they go right into the N. Mountain, fountain, cotton, button. Look for my videos and lessons about syllabic N and also stopped T, and that will help you. It'll give you a list of words and some additional help for those patterns. I'll show you where that is on the website. If you haven't yet been to speechmodification.com, I suggest going there to find some more details and help for some of these things that you're still struggling with. So the website address is speechmodification.com. And once you get there, to find the free lessons, go to the free practice, online practice free trial, and then you'll see lots of different lessons. And so for you, you're wondering about, I'm going to type in syllabic N in my search tool, and then I'll see all of the lessons related to that. So we have a couple of different lessons, spelling challenges, how to say the T sound in the middle of words. This one's going to be the most useful for you for your words like mountain, and fountain. So it talks about the different types of T, how to do those T words, and then here's a lot of examples of other places where you have that T and N, and so some NT words that use that stop T and the syllabic N together. Some practice materials and videos to help you go deeper on speechmodification.com. Okay, great question. So we've been talking about reduced sounds. We've been talking about other things to be fluent and connected and in real talk, how Americans sound in spoken words versus written words. And I want to look briefly at contractions and talk with you about why to use them. But first, I'll take one more question. Why does the A in sang, rang, or bang sound like A and not ah when Americans say these words? Sang, let's see. So if I say the word sat versus the word sang, I am using the same ah vowel. But what you're hearing is that when I have an N after the A, sang, the A vowel gets more nasalized. So when I say sat, my mouth is more open and the vowel is resonating in my mouth. When I say sang, I'm getting ready for that NG sound, and some of the vowel sound is resonating in my nasal cavity instead of in my oral cavity. And so for you, you're hearing it sound like sang, but I'm really saying sang. I am saying that ah vowel. It's just that the context, the other sounds around it change how that vowel sounds. So if I say sat, sang, or say, sang, you can hear maybe that sat and sang are closer together than say and sang. When I say, my mouth is not very open. When I say sat and sang, my mouth is more open. So you can watch my mouth and see say, sang, that my mouth has to open more for the ah in sang. So my mouth is open for the vowel, but because of the way my tongue is lifting and getting ready to go to the NG sound, it sounds more closed and you're perceiving more of that A sound. So this is something that what I would say is focusing on making sure you're making all of the sounds in that word and putting them together correctly. Co-articulating the sound is going to help you say the word sang the same way an American does. So you may actually want to look at the NG sound rather than the vowel sound. The vowel will naturally change in how it sounds based on those other sounds around it. Great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so last thing, contractions. What we want to talk about or look at is how, when we have multiple verbs in our sentence, Americans will almost always use contraction. it's correct, it's formal, it's efficient and smooth and fluent, and that's why we do it. So you want to try to start using contractions as well, because if you're saying a sentence like, I am going, even if you're pronouncing everything correctly, linking everything, having everything American about that pronunciation, just by saying I am going, rather than I'm going, your speech will sound different. Americans will hear an accent even when there is no accent if you say I am going. It's just because of the choice of words that Americans will always use. So trying to use contractions like I'm for I am, and rather than I will, use I'll. I would, use I'd, especially when you have multiple verbs. So for example, we would not have to. If I say we would not have to, that sounds very stiff, doesn't flow very well, doesn't sound very American. They're going to always say we wouldn't have to. We wouldn't, we couldn't, we shouldn't, we would have, we could have, we should have. You can get help for which contractions to use and how to pronounce them on speechmodification.com. Just search under contractions. And also you can use my contractions video here on YouTube. And what I would suggest for beginning to bring this into your speech is just choose one or two. Maybe choose should have, would have, or wouldn't, couldn't, or I'm, and try to start incorporating that into your speech. Notice if you say I will and try to change to I'll. Don't try to do it all at once. It becomes overwhelming to think of all these contractions. And maybe you use some and you can add another one or two. So maybe there's some contractions you already naturally use, but you don't say wouldn't or couldn't, and you could have tried to use that. So that's just another suggestion for being more fluent. Let's see our next questions, excuse me. Quality and words like priority, priorities are really confusing. Sure, so the words quality, priority, what's happening there is at the end you have the I-T-Y, and Americans will use a flap T there. So I always start with a word like city, very simple word. It sounds more like city with a light D sound, flapped sound. And the other thing that you'll notice is that, the other thing that's challenging is that this is an I vowel and an E vowel. And so if you can practice just doing itty, itty, going from the lax I vowel to the tense E vowel with a flap in between, that's going to help you on many, many of these words. So city, priority, quality, possibility. There's many, many words that end with I-T-Y or L-I-T-Y, and it's basically challenging to do both E and I together. Many people I hear will say city or CD. They do tend to want, our mouth tends to want to do both I vowels or both E vowels, and we have to get used to going from I to E. Itty, itty. Go very slowly until you get it, and then build that on to those other words. I do have practice materials specifically for words with ITY on speechmodification.com. Hi, Javier. He'd like to know how to pronounce ma'am. That sounds like m-am with the a vowel. So it's the black cat vowel, same as Sam or am or ham. So ma'am, even though we write it like that, it's short for old-fashioned word madam. Ma'am, we just say it as though it had one A sound, one a. Yes. And Susan wants to know, is there any W in the word pull? Pull. No, because we're not going from any rounded shape there. In the word pool, pool, we have the oo to with the W in between. But in the word pull, O, it's basically an and an and they're the same shape, so we don't have to make any changes. Pull. You do hear a few places in the US and the East Coast, maybe some other places, where they'll say this word pull more like pool. Pull it, pull it. I say pull it, and I think that's more common in sort of overall the US, but that might be why you're noticing that sometimes those two words are very similar in certain regions of the US. Hi, Kurt, nice to see you. Another question. Can I say I very much like a cake, or should I say I like a cake very much? I would say we tend to use I like a cake very much. I like cake very much. If I say I very much like something, that is another way of emphasizing the very much part. So you can say I very much like cake. You wouldn't say I very much like a cake, because that you either say you don't need the in that case. I very much like cake means cake in general. If you're talking about a cake, you're talking about one cake. You would say a cake is I would like to bake a cake. I would like to have a cake. I would very much like to have a cake. Yes, so it is okay to say the very much first. It's just a way of emphasizing that part, and it's kind of an interesting way of putting it. The more standard way is I like cake very much. That's kind of a more regular way, and highlighting the very much would be by putting it first. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for being part of class today and for all of your questions. We will talk a little bit more about contractions next time if there are questions and if people would like to. Otherwise, we might move and move into some intonation training, which we haven't done in a little while. And I did just recently add a video that is talking about pitch. And it's some very basic pitch practice. So for some of you, it'll be too easy. Many of you are using intonation patterns very well. But the video just talks about how we use rising and falling pitch. I can use the word order to show if I'm asking a question or making a statement. But I also use pitch. So in a simple two-word yes-no question, that just means the question can be answered with a yes or no, and there's no question word like what or who. So when I say yes, no questions, that's what that means. So the question, should I, because there's no question word, I use a rising intonation to show that it's a question. So I want to start on a medium pitch and rise up to a higher pitch. So should I? And then if I'm making a two-word statement, I start at that same medium pitch, I should, and I can fall off. So this is just a very simple video showing you and demonstrating rising and falling pitch. Should I? I should. Do we? We do. So you can practice those two patterns. And then later, you can look at how we often, on a statement like I should, end up using a rising and falling pattern. So we start at medium, we rise up to stress, and then we fall off to show we're done. So that sounds like I should, rising up and falling off. So check that out in my video about simple pitch patterns, and we'll go into more detail with some intonation for stress, for pitch, and for other things you can do to have that American intonation and that American sound next week. Thanks so much for being a part of class today. If you are checking this out later, you can ask your questions in the comments, and I will get back to you, give you resources and answers for where you can find help for your question. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, you might want to do that, because then when I have a new video or a live class, it'll show up on your home page. You can turn on notifications or leave them off. It doesn't matter to me. It's a good way of showing YouTube that you want to know more about my content. So if you go onto YouTube, and if you're a subscriber, you can just make a choice between having notifications on or off. That'll just send you a quick email or notification that you want when I have the live class and when something new is uploaded. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of class today and asking your great questions. It made it a really good class, really fun for me, and I hope it was informative for you. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound American, you can do it. speechmodification.com.